at fine art, and we're also going to be looking at how I use color to create my looks, and also in development if I'm creating my own pigments or mixing foundations or mixing nail polish. I did not go to school for this, but I pretty much just learned as an artist and also as a self-taught chemist. So let's go ahead and get into some of the basics of Western colors and understand colors. So we don't have a lot of mystery systems right now. So there isn't like one view of what colors are. Um, Usually, if you're into the divine arts, you'll get to learn things like perfumes, makeup, clothing, etc., to help you understand this the illusion that you live in the back in the day. As that goes away, you get into sort of more of a commercialized versions of colors and what it translated into this reality, like foundations, makeup, fine art. If you have fine art, most people don't. Clothing, etc. Um, if you have the ability to get into a higher brand like military, like if you do stuff for states or military, or let's say a house, people who have like a mansion of or a house of, like maybe perfumery, you'll get into more of a higher understanding of what these things mean. Used to be you could probably work in high fashion in the very earlier years, but that has gone away now. So you don't really no one really gets taught this unless they're in a very very special situation. And even if you try to go through the spiritual route, you're probably not going to be taught this beyond like a chakra system or whatever system that they tell you about. And it's usually associated with an institution and not the person. But that is beyond that. But I'm just saying the basis of everything, including medicine, makeup, perfume, is always mystic. And then from there, it gets watered down through military systems and everything else. So you get a loss. You sort of lose the sort of understanding of what these things are. And I'm an anthropologist, so I always go back and find the truth of this reality versus just accepting the norm. And that's how I got to this part here. Okay, so we're looking at two different things. So this is a sort of what you can find in the Western system, and that is tints is when you add white, and shades is when you add black. Shade ranges is usually when they say like foundation is shade range. It just means lighter or darker. But if you're wanting to use sort of an art term, shade would be a darker, and then tint will be adding white in. Tone is going towards the gray. Hue is if it pulls one color or the other. It's easy to see absolutes, like there's a blue and there's a green, easy. But whenever you get in between, like a turquoise, you say, okay, is it pulling a blue hue or a green hue? So those are hues. You can also see this in like oranges. There's a particular moment where you shift from a red orange to an orange. So you have to make a decision. Do you want more of a red hue, or do you want more of an orange hue? Okay, so those are the basics. Then we get into something called chroma, which is actually part of a system. It's part of a system of colors. This is the girl with the pearl earring. But I want to show you the color system. So this gentleman here, and I'll provide his information. This is it. Created a system where you take in what I call the inner light of a color. There are only red, blue, and green, and yellow. Yeah, red, blue, and green, and yellow, I think. Primary colors. Wait. And sorry, I'm looking through also Newton, because Newton actually added in two colors. Now I always get confused because those two colors are not technically primary colors, but he added them in to match the octaves of music. So the primary colors are red, green, and blue. Okay, cool. Red, green, and blue. They have to be a yellow though, because you can't make yellow. So red, green, blue. Yeah. Red, green, blue, and yellow. Okay? Those are primary colors. And basically, you can create these colors, but you can add in certain colors to then create another kind of color or to just shift the undertone, making it blue or making it, like just going back here, making the hue, changing the hue, making it say more orange than more red by adding those in. But chroma is almost like an inner light. This is a very special kind of blue, and you can't really get this kind of blue from synthetic pigments. It looks like it is vibrating, like it's radioactive. That's the best way of explaining. That's chroma. And because blue is a primary color, you can't make it. So it has to have this sort of quality on its own. And this is an example of chroma. This green stands out vibrant, almost starts to reflect light without having a white base. So I say I like to use chroma to explain blues, reds, mostly blues and reds because that in makeup, that's usually what I'm working with. I'm usually working with a red lipstick or blue, and then you add blue into brown foundations to get a certain vibrancy without being ashiness, but I won't get into that right now, without tinting it down. So if you try to make foundation with just one kind of pigment, you're really not going to get that deeper color. You have to then add in a base, which is usually a white. I think it's zinc or another one. Um, and that's where you're going to get more of that payoff. Just like if you try to apply a foundation or try to apply an eyeshadow on top of just your eye, and you didn't put like a white or a lighter concealer on, the lighter the concealer, the more the color stands out. Because there literally in my system, there are three versions of this. It either can overlay the white that's in there. That means that you don't see the white, you see mostly just the pigment itself. You can get cheaper, if you notice this, if you get cheap or cheaper eyeshadow, it'll have like the color, but then it'll look powdery. That's that white seeking through. Then you'll have it to where it's reflected back. It means it looks ashy. It doesn't look powdery. It looks ashy, like the wrong color. That's basically the dark pigment getting absorbed by the shadow, and then it's reflecting the white, like it's reflecting it or throwing it back the way you would find like a chessboard. There are no lines on a chessboard. Those lines are illusions created by the reflective of those two gradients, because they're not real colors, they're black and white, sort of reflecting from each other. So that's what that is. So chroma is not just so much if something is tinted down, like you're adding white in. No, it is about how vibrant that particular color stands out. You can see this here. This isn't A Mood for Love, and I think this is House of Flying Daggers. Very great movies. Pretty cool movies. Okay? We're going to get into this type of pigment. So this pigment you'll see a lot of fine artists use, mostly not like modern art, because of the methods of getting this. This actually comes from a mineral from Egypt, and they use a lot of this. Some of the older Grecian statues actually had this type of mineral on their sculptures because it glows in the dark. That's how powerful it is. Like this picture is not doing it justice of how this particular color looks. It literally has its own inner light. Okay, and you can see it was used. Its finest, the most expensive blue used by Renaissance painters. The reason why I really love these kind of light, because it pushes towards what I call the like elevated colors. And the more the example of an elevated color is the white that is actually blue. And you will see them use this type of blue in the white to give it that vibrancy. It's almost like it is projecting. It's almost like it's projecting, and like the black body theory is the same, except instead of just being dark as white, it's reflecting and rejecting at the same time, like an equilibrium, but it's really blue. I hope that makes sense. And it's a very powerful color. Modern cosmetics doesn't really use the real blues. They use the synthetics. So you'll see this been used in the synthetics. The great thing about this particular kind of blue, especially for darker skin tones, is that if you put it in here, you can get the same sort of pigment payoff and vibrancy without having a gray cast. So this is a study that they did using these types of pigments. Okay, so going back to the system that we saw earlier, where you saw the Chroma system, right? When I saw this, it opened my eyes to how to even use that chart, right? So to get to a level of Chroma of this vibrancy, you have to have good pigment. If you have a cheaper pigment or a pigment doesn't have that level of Chroma, you're probably going to end up in this range here. So that blue is here, or probably the synthetic version is probably here or here, and then the real version is probably over here. That's how vibrant it is. This here is the white. You see the tint. It starts out as a tint, and it gets grayer and grayer and grayer and grayer until it gets a black color. So basically that's what that is. And you mix that particular color going towards each one of these tints until it gets to a shade. And that's pretty much it. You can definitely look up some work by Isaac Newton where he does experiments with spectrums. You can see how he ties it into music. Yeah, he places orange and indigo. Okay, half step. So yeah, he adds in color to the color range. So sequence is red, orange, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, which is a purple and violet. Magenta is beautiful and in a base of red, but you can't make magenta. Magenta has to be within the quality of the reds themselves, much the way that these blues have to be in that range in and of itself, because of the fact that you can't mix. It has to be in the quality of the pigments themselves. And if you're able to understand that, you actually have gone into the real land of luxury, because you are able to basically see the difference between what they're presenting to you and ultimately the real thing, right? Doesn't mean that you dislike it. This is actually a beautiful color. It's just that you're not just going to put yourself in a situation to where you only think that this exists within the world of makeup. A lot of people don't go into makeup because they feel that what you see is what you get, and there's no other expressions. And it's not easy to find information about pigments, especially with making foundation. You can learn how to make a lotion, a body butter, a tinted moisturizer. You can never find anyone that will sit down and just talk about pigments. And we have a lot of cosmetic chemists. We have a lot of it. So most of the time, whenever I was researching this, I had to go into the land of art, find artistry to find out these sort of qualities. And again, skin is not the same as a canvas. You have very different qualities. Skin is alive. It's just the same thing as working with a real silk versus a synthetic. You're not dealing with the same thing. But you can get clues to how things may be able to look and move. But you ultimately have to look at the real thing first and experience that. I also talk a lot about that with perfumery. Like, people think Shalimar is the oriental perfume. It is not. It is a synthetic version of somebody else's creation of what is considered oriental. But it doesn't mean that you don't like it. Okay, let's get up a little close up to the white. Do you see like parts of it to where it's more saturated with white? It has like an inner glow. It's getting that from that particular blue. Okay? And then it creates this look. You can imagine what this painting looks like in its full restoration, and its full power. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I love to talk about color, makeup, and all the good stuff. If you want to expand upon this, provide any information or books, please put it in the comments below and let's talk about it. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao.